Alright, everyone, welcome back. So, our 2023-2024 season previews continue on today with the Florida Panthers. So, we talked about one Kachuk brother yesterday. We're talking about the other one today. I thought that was a funny transition that I never even realized. So, Florida, obviously, at the end of this past season, I don't think really anybody thought they were going to be in the spot that they were this past year. They made the Stanley Cup Finals, obviously. They went 42, 32, and 8 for 92 points. They were 17th in the NHL, and they lost in the Stanley Cup Finals to the Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, they won in the first round in Game 7 against the Boston Bruins, the President's Trophy winning team. Then they won in 5 games against Toronto. Then they won in a sweep against Carolina. So one of the better runs we've seen coming from a team that obviously, has never had or has never really been that far in the playoffs in a pretty long time, if we're being honest. And look, they were 17th in the NHL. Had Pittsburgh won that game against Chicago, it's an entirely different story. Florida misses the playoffs, and then we're in that conversation of rebuild this, rebuild that, retool this, retool that. Still, I think they're in a bad spot. I'm not going to deny it. I think they still are in a bad spot. Even though I was proven wrong by them in this year's playoffs. And with Florida winning that series and Florida winning all the way to the finals, it showed that anything can happen in the playoffs, which is obviously something that I bring up a lot of times. But your departures and your arrivals, it was a pretty eventful offseason for Florida, and they're going to be facing some issues when it comes to next season. So your departures list: Anthony Duclair, Radko Gudas, Eric Stahl, Mark Stahl, Colin White, Patrick Hornquist, and Alex Lyon. So, honestly, the departures list isn't that bad. I'm not going to lie. Duclair, probably the biggest loss there on that top six. Obviously, he was traded to San Jose for Lorentz. We'll get into him in a second. Gudas, not a bad, third pairing guy. Showed like he did pretty well in the playoffs. I liked Gudas a lot. The Stahl brothers both played kind of minor roles, but still were notable there on those blue lines and in the center depth. Colin White, a deft defenseman, was nothing much there. Hornquist was hurt a lot, so really, I don't really know how to profile that, but still, nonetheless, a great player. And then Alex Lyon there, too, a good backup goalie, and was like a third string there. Kind of helped them get to the playoffs, and then Borowski obviously picked it up. Heading it into the playoffs, obviously. So, yeah, those are your departures list. Your arrivals list goes as follows. You have Evan Rodriguez, Steve Lorentz, Kevin Stenlund, Nico Mikkola, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Dmitry Kulikov, Mike Riley, and Anthony Stolars. So, look, when this initially came out, I honestly didn't like the arrivals they had. But now that I look at it in a full list and kind of process it a little bit, I like it a little bit more, but I still am not a big fan of the guys they've acquired. Rodriguez, great forward. I love Rodriguez. One of my favorite guys, a good middle six type player, probably a second line player on Florida right now. Lorentz, a good fourth line center there for sure. Could do some wonders. Stenlund, a good fourth liner there as well. Nico Mikkola, I thought he's a solid defenseman, but it was kind of an overpay for his contract. I'm not going to lie to you. I felt like it was an overpay. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I didn't like it at all. OEL's a liability on the blue line for when he was with Vancouver. But obviously it's a one-year contract, so it's not that big of a deal. Kulikov is a true journeyman. He's been to so many teams. Mike Riley had his iffy times with Boston this past year, so honestly I really don't know what to expect. And then Stoli, the goalie, obviously I like him a lot there too, though, because he's a good third stringer probably on Florida. If Spencer Knight is obviously playing this season and is fully, not healthy, but out of the player assistance program. Of course, we'll find out there, though. Your lineup goes as follows. Top six, you have Carter Verhaeghe, Alexander Barkov, and Matthew Tkachuk. Then you have Evan Rodriguez, Sam Bennett, and Sam Reinhart. So, obviously, there your top six is not terrible. Obviously, the first line is great. Verhaeghe, Barkov, Tkachuk. Obviously, a first line that did wonders in the playoffs. Tkachuk, big there. And with Matthew Tkachuk, honestly, you take him off this Florida team, and it showed in the regular season and it showed in the playoffs, they're awful. They are awful. So, honestly, Tkachuk is really what's keeping them from being just a horrible team, to be honest with you. Second line, you got Rodriguez, a new player there. I'm going to like him on that second line spot. Sam Bennett, good second C there. And then Sam Reinhart as well, obviously an underrated player there for Florida. Your bottom six, you have E2 Luostranen, Anton Lundell, and Ryan Lomberg. Then you got Nick Cousins, Steve Lawrence, and Kevin Stenlund. A weak bottom six, but still not that bad of a bottom six either. Then you got Denisenko, Dalp, and Samoskevich as some extra guys there. Obviously, Samoskevich and Denisenko, we talked about. Those guys could get legitimate NHL spots. It's very possible, but of course, we will find out there what their plan is with handling those guys for sure. But of course, that is your forward core. Outside of the top six, not too enticing, not going to lie. Even though some of those players were big parts in that run, not very enticing. Your defense is way worse. I'm not going to lie. And especially, too, with Ekblad and Uyghur being injured, it is not looking good. So I did add them to the lineup. I did put it in here because I wanted to make it the healthiest lineup and the lineup that it would be if it was healthy. So you got a first pairing of Uyghur and Ekblad, Forsling and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I know it's different on the lineup page here you see, but that's how I'm going with it. Mikkola and Mahura as your third pairing. Then you got Kulikov and Riley as some extra defenders there. You remove Uyghur and Ekblad, your two best defensemen. Your best D's probably Gustav Forsling. Not going to lie to you. It's probably Gustav Forsling is your best defenseman on that roster. And that is yikes, for sure. That is yikes for a team like Florida. So, honestly, I'm not liking their defense. And that's their biggest X factor. Can their injured defense get them back to the playoffs? And if they make the playoffs, can they do anything in them? So, that's obviously the biggest question that we're going to see. Right now, I'm going to say no, but we'll find out what's going to happen there with Florida for sure. Your goaltending tandem is as follows. Bobrovsky and Knight are your two goalies most likely. And then Anthony Stolarz is your third string goalie. Obviously, if Knight isn't ready to come back by then Stolarz will be the backup. But, of course, this is off of the most healthiest team. The biggest question to me is, are they going to bounce back from that Stanley Cup Finals loss and still be a consistent team afterwards? That's my biggest question right now facing Florida. Because, honestly, if they're not good, they don't have much of a future because their first round pick for this year is in Philly. I think their first round pick for next year as well is in Calgary or it's somewhere. I'm really not entirely too sure. Like their picks are everywhere right now. They don't have a first round pick for the next 2 years. So that is just absolutely brutal there for Florida for sure. So I'm not liking their odds. Not gonna lie to you. I'm really not. And with teams getting better in the Atlantic, it just isn't looking good for them anymore to be a legitimate team there in the Atlantic Division for sure. But obviously, we will find out. Your point projections here per the Hockey News' fantasy guide go as follows. You got Kachuk at first with 109, Barkov with 81, Reinhart with 73, Verhaeghe with 66, and then Brandon Montour with 65. Obviously, that's if it is fully healthy there, of course. Your sleeper or your bust is Sergei Bobrovsky, and no surprise there. A great playoff run doesn't negate Sergei Bobrovsky's pedestrian .901 regular season save percentage. A slew of injuries to key players mean Florida will begin 23-24 shorthanded, and that Bobrovsky won't be getting much help. So yes, obviously there, Bobrovsky's in for an interesting year. I mentioned during the regular season how Florida really. Bobrovsky showed some points where he was not very good. So we're going to find out there whether or not that run was a fluke. But, of course, we shall see. Their cup odds are 42-1, and I'll end off the preview with that. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and down below. We really appreciate it. The next one we're doing is the Seattle Kraken tomorrow to start up September. So, anyways, this is the last video of August. Probably. But, anyways, thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.